Hello and welcome to Sideways. This week we're talking about how to keep yourself safe from the world and how to keep the world safe from you. I give you an exercise to do which requires a pencil and paper, and Martin insists on colouring his in for reasons best known to himself. We also debate the rigours of being a replacement for Queen frontman Freddie Mercury. Boundaries.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And how are you?
You couldn't think of what to say there for a minute, could you?
Not really. No, you were being overly polite, and it's unlike you.
I just thought I'd throw you off by being somewhat silent for a moment.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it did throw me a little bit. There's a little picture on our WhatsApp group this morning, which I think was really good.
Yeah,
it's a really nice little picture. One of the lads, I won't name check him because I haven't got his permission, but he put a picture on there with him cuddling his newborn son. Well, I think he's 3 or 4 months old now, but he put on there, Sunday morning cuddles beats Sunday morning hangovers every time. So I thought it was very sweet, a sweet way to start Sunday.
Well, that's lovely, isn't it? Because it is an illustration of that conversation we've often had about how it's sad in a way, isn't it, that you can't communicate to someone what it's like on the other side of the horror that they're experiencing in active addiction.
Yeah, it is. It is because you can't see it. That you can't see you can't see the other side. It doesn't exist as far as you're concerned when you're in the madness. That's for sure.
Yeah. Go on.
I thought it was very nice anyway. So I thought I'd just mention that. It wasn't in my notes, but I thought I'd just throw it in because it was a last minute addition.
Blimey, you're ad-libbing. That's unlike you.
I know. Yeah. I'm uncomfortable. Outside my comfort zone. Quick, let's get back to notes.
That's quite an uplifting way to start today. So I guess it's all going to be downhill from here, is it?
No, it is. I could easily add that in at the end on my gratitude list, couldn't I?
Oh yeah. Crikey! I've forgotten to think about that.
Well, I've given you notice now. Then you have a quick think whilst we're doing this.
Yeah. Okay. I will do. So, what do you want to talk about this week?
Boundaries.
Boundaries.
Why boundaries are important?
Like in cricket? Yeah, they're not the boundaries you mean, though, are they?
They're not the boundaries I mean, but it's funny you should mention that because I was thinking of putting something about the cricket in my notes. It didn't make it in the end, but you've brought it back to the fore anyway.
Teased it out of you. So go on. What do you want to talk about? So you're talking about emotional boundaries, right?
Well, I know when I mentioned this to you about doing this episode, you were quite surprised that we hadn't touched on it before, and I was a little bit really because I think it's quite an important issue, particularly in the recovery community. Because boundaries have been quite ragged during active addiction.
Should we kind of clarify what we mean by an emotional boundary?
Let's hear it from a therapist's point of view then.
So the way I always explain it is to say that an emotional boundary is something that protects us from the world and protects the world from us. It's that ability to be able to know when you need to protect yourself from something that's happening in someone else's world or outside of you. And when you need to also protect the world and other people from things that are happening within you. You know, it's like the oversharing is an absence of boundary. Being dependent on the praise and love of others is an absence of a boundary. Making it impossible for people to see who you are and keeping yourself very much to yourself and away from connection is evidence of too high a boundary. They're all kind of illustrations of boundary issues. Is that a good explanation?
It's quite succinct. A little bit verbose, a little bit dragged out. But
it can't be succinct. Can't be succinct and verbose, can it? Which one is it?
I'm not quite sure. I was using succinct in a sort of an ironic fashion at that point.
But you're taking the piss, then, is what you're saying?
Yes, but I didn't want to be quite so rude on a Sunday morning. But I mean, my key worker always told me, and we're talking about boundaries, she always told me that setting boundaries is also about giving yourself agency and empowerment. Mm-hmm. And she said it's really important in recovery to have these boundaries because it can boost your self-esteem.
Yeah.
And it's also in the recovery community, having boundaries allows you to make yourself a priority, which is really vital in recovery. And I think that we do forget that in general life as well, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, obviously, yeah, that's right. Having an absence of boundaries tends to mean that you don't prioritize yourself because you're too busy prioritizing the needs of everybody else. So a boundary, and now that's really what I meant by a boundary protecting you from the world. If you have a boundary, you're protecting yourself from all the demands that are potentially placed upon you from outside of you. So that's absolutely right. It does give you agency. It gives you the opportunity to recognize and think about the aspects of life that are most important for you.
I agree. But I think the word boundary can be a bit misleading, can't it? I mean, it sort of conveys the idea of keeping yourself completely separate. But actually, I see boundaries, I don't know how you see them, but I see them more as sort of actual connecting points, as they sort of provide healthy rules, don't they? When you're navigating relationships, on an intimate or a professional level. And they're not really a giant fence, are they? They're more like a sort of an invisible bubble, if you like.
Well, yeah, I think they're both, because if you've got an appropriate boundary, you're right. It's absolutely right that your boundary is such that it is high enough to protect you to the extent you need protecting, but it is low enough to allow the people that you want in to be able to, get over it or through it. If that makes any sort of sense.
Yeah, it does.
So there's this. I'll tell you this little. I do this little exercise with people about boundaries.
Okay.
So if you've got any sort of doubt as to, if you're kind of listening to this conversation and thinking, what the hell are they talking about, or you don't really have any sense of what your own attitude to boundaries is, you can try this little exercise. So I don't mean you. I mean, you can try it, but
I can try it afterwards.
I'm talking to the listeners who are much more interesting to talk to than you.
Thank you. Yes, of course they are. Much more important. I agree.
Much more important. So you get yourself a piece of paper, blank paper preferably, and what you do is you draw ever increasing sizes of, like, if you were to draw a target on a big piece of paper, that's what you're basically doing. So you draw a circle in the middle, slightly bigger one round it, and so on and so forth until you get to the edge of the paper.
Can you colour them in at all in different colours, like a target, or would that detract from the image?
You can colour them in if you want. I've never been asked that question.
Well, I'm going to try it afterwards. I'm definitely going to be colouring them in.
Yeah, you can colour them in. I mean, as with any of these therapeutic exercises, there's never any right or wrong answer. You can do whatever the hell you like.
Yeah, okay.
Right. So when you've got your target coloured in or not coloured in, colour or monochrome, what you do is you put a letter in the innermost circle. You put your initial in there. So, you put your M in the middle. And the assumption here is that you know yourself better than anybody else. Okay. And so the reason you're putting yourself in the centre is because you really have no boundary from yourself. Now, that is a bit of an assumption. But we haven't really got time to get into the complexities of how well we are familiar with ourselves. So for the purposes of this, we'll assume that you do know yourself quite well. And then the idea of the exercise is to think about all the people in your life that have some sort of importance or that you come into contact with regularly, and then to plot them on your target. And the nearer you plot them to the centre, the more you consider that they really do know you properly. And I don't mean you wouldn't put people near the centre if they thought they knew you, but if you know that their impression of you is not actually that accurate, so they don't really know you at all, then obviously you'd put them further out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so after you finish plotting everybody on the target, you end up with this picture of your boundaries, essentially. So you look at the people who are near to the centre and know you well, and you look at the people who are further out and don't know you so well. And the first question you kind of ask yourself is, how do I feel about this? Now, most people have the people in their lives spread across that target, but sometimes people have everybody kind of clustered around the centre, which suggests that they've got a problem with an absence of boundaries. They let too many people too close too quickly. And then there'll be other people who've got no one really near the centre. Those people tend to feel quite isolated and lonely. And part of the reason for that is they tend to keep their boundaries high so that no one can really get close to them. And quite often the reason they do that is to keep themselves emotionally safe. But actually, what it ends up doing is it makes them feel emotionally isolated and alone. So if you want to get a sense of how you are with boundaries, you can do that exercise, and it will give you some sort of sense of how you treat them. As I say, if you've got a good spread of people from the centre out to the edges, then that suggests you're probably all right with them. Unless, of course, you've got someone near the centre, like the man who works in the garage that you don't know from Adam, in which case.
I've never heard of that exercise before, but I think that's very interesting. I can just imagine. I mean, you just put the initials down. You don't put the full names down. But imagine that getting into the wrong hands. It'd be like someone reading your diary, wouldn't it? When you've been slagging them off.
Yeah, it's interesting.
They think they should be further towards the centre, and you popped them on one of the outer rings.
Yeah, that's interesting. Again, nobody's ever asked me that, because usually what I would say to people, either I will keep it if I'm working with someone, so they'll write it and I'll keep it. Or if you do it on your own, yeah, you're right. The best thing to do is to destroy it, because you don't really want it falling into the wrong hands. Although people don't always use initials. Sometimes people do little pictures. It's a sort of Ponzi thing that you do. You draw little pictures of people.
Yeah, I could do a little image of you. In fact, I was just wondering where I'd be. Yeah, I don't you wouldn't be on the target. You'd be way outside. I think you'd be like, like on those, like on the curling rink, right? you'd have to have a load of people with brushes trying to sweep the ice clean to get you in anywhere near the target.
Yeah. Now you and I both know that isn't true.
That's where I value you.
It's not so much about the way you value someone. It's about the way you sometimes have inadvertently let someone too close. I mean, actually, as we're talking about that, I know you're making a humorous comment, which isn't at all humorous, but
no.
The reality is that, and I'm not your therapist, but as a therapist, I would mostly appear very close to the centre of people, because they tell me things that they probably won't have told anybody else. So people never put me on their target, because there's not much point, because we know that my whole function is to kind of operate near to the centre. But so, yeah. That's,
okay. So I get that. I do get all that. Do you then redraw that target at a later stage and change that? Because, I mean, boundaries aren't meant to be, set in stone, are they? They're movable, aren't they, depending on your circumstances and what are the changes that are happening in your life?
Yeah, absolutely right. That's exactly the purpose of doing the exercise. When you don't do the exercise kind of fairly early on, if there is a sense that someone has an issue with boundaries, then the conversation is very much around, well, how do you feel about this? What do you feel might need changing? Which people do you feel like you might need to kind of push a little bit further out? Which people might you need to bring a bit closer in, so that you create that situation in your life where you're getting a good balance between gaining from the connection you have to people who you want to have close, but also maybe keeping the toxicity or negativity from the people that you've allowed too close. You need to kind of push them away. So that's absolutely right. Sometime later, you would revisit that and you'd say, well, let's discuss how this might have changed. Yeah.
Yeah. And would you see that then as a progression there in someone's mental well-being, if it starts to become a little bit more spread out, so those names, and a bit more evenly distributed over the target area?
I think what tends to happen is it's quite rare to see someone with a sort of a blanket boundary problem, where they've got everybody near the centre or everybody near the edge. What tends to happen is there tend to be certain people that feel as if they're in the wrong place. So you've got someone who's too far towards the outer and you think, why is that? Your partner, for instance, what the hell's going on there? Or, you've got random associates that are too close to the centre. And really, there isn't. I mean, in addiction, the problem would mostly, I suspect, be those extremes. There'll be people near the centre who you've allowed too close. You've become too reliant on that. You're not best placed to put your emotional safety in their hands, or you will have pushed everybody that is potentially close to you so far away that they can't be of any assistance to you. I mean, we've spoken before about how when you were in active addiction, no one could get close to you, could they?
No.
You couldn't get, so, whether it be me or your cousin or anything else, you would push people away. You wouldn't go anywhere near anybody that potentially would be a positive influence in your life because of your addiction. So they're the sorts of things that I think you would tend to see when people are in active addiction.
Yeah, I think, again, it's really interesting. Just trying to think about my own personal situation, but you're right. I think the people that will be closest to the centre are the people that I've been sort of drinking and taking drugs with, and
Exactly.
and all the people that are now in the centre are out on the periphery.
Yeah, I mean, you are. I think you are quite a good example of that because, as you say, the people who were closest to you would be people who knew that dimension of you, would have understood you from the perspective of addiction. But if you think about everybody else who may have had some sort of long-term stake in your life, they'd all gone to the outer edges.
Yeah,
your children, your friends, your family, and so if anything, and I expect it's quite a typical picture. Your picture was kind of the inverse of what would be considered healthy.
Yeah. Well, I think it's brilliant. I don't want to be too sycophantic and blow too much smoke up, but it's really good.
Well, I mean, the thing about recovery, and again, certainly true in your recovery, I think, what you did, your recovery, if you were charting that same sort of exercise over the years, your recovery has created a flip in that picture, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So you've pulled all the people that were on the outer edges into the centre, and you've pushed all the people that were in the centre out to the outer edges, which is a healthy picture of boundaries.
It is. I mean, yes. Again, it's just something I should reflect on later on down the line because I think it's really good. But I also remember my key worker saying. Now, well, I say I remember. I've had to look back at some of my early notes on some of this because I remember her talking about the boundaries that are associated with things like having the right to say no without feeling guilty. Mm-hmm. Having that, would you say that as a boundary or was that a periphery of boundaries? I mean, she said it was all in the same sort of boundary notes that I had.
It's absolutely a boundary. It's absolutely a boundary because an absence of boundary is the thing that causes you to say yes when you mean no.
Okay, that's fine. That clarifies that then, because I wasn't sure.
So if someone says to you, "Can you do this for me?" or "Do you want to go here?" or whatever it is, and you're thinking to yourself, "I really don't want to," but for some reason you find yourself saying yes because either you don't want to upset the other person, or you feel as if the consequence of you saying no is going to create some other problem for you. What you've done is you've lost your boundary completely to some imagined greater good. But of course, it isn't. It's not a greater good at all because your ability to be able to say what you feel and stand behind that boundary is really important. So it's
right. It is. I mean, I'm sure you've come across people, and I have, where people will say yes, yeah, we'll do that, and then really they mean no, but can't tell you face to face, and will just drop out at a later stage, or they won't turn up, or they'll do something else, But I remember my key worker also saying to me, you shouldn't feel guilty, and you shouldn't have to explain why you're saying no either. You just say no, and you should leave it at that. I find that really difficult now. I still do. I mean, it's something I've tried to do. It's coupling in because she very much saw me as a people pleaser as well, and said, you're not taking yourself into account really. You're putting other people's positions first, and again, you'd rather do something for someone else rather than do something for yourself. You'd rather be helpful to someone else rather than helping yourself. You've got to change that around. That's not how recovery works. And I think that was very wise of her to tell me that, because I was very, very guilty of that. I wanted everyone to. I had such low self-esteem that any bit of a show of niceness or nicety towards me, I'd lap it up, and then I started to crave it, almost like an addict. And it was very difficult for me not to want everyone to like me. Now I don't worry anywhere near as much. I don't worry that I know some people like me, some people don't, and that's the deal. And I'm much happier with that now.
There's a connection here to. Do you remember we talked once about how you don't like opening presents?
Yes, in front of people.
Yeah, so there's a connection there because what you're talking about there is a kind of feeling of not being quite enough. If someone gives you a present, it feels awkward to open it in front of them because you're feeling at some level as if you don't really deserve this. You shouldn't be the object of this attention, that you're not as important as this person sees you as being through having given you this gift. And so the kind of saying yes when you mean no is part of the same thing. It's part of who do I need to be in order to be okay? Because at that end of the spectrum, your absence of boundaries is about love dependence. It's about you feeling like you have to constantly do something additional to earn the love and respect of other people rather than just being yourself. Because if you feel as if it's enough to just be yourself, which of course, most addicts don't, if you feel it's enough just to be yourself, you would have no problem saying, no, thanks, I really don't fancy that. It wouldn't even strike you as possible that someone might think, oh, well, I don't think I want to be around you now. But when you struggle for a sense of self-worth, you're always thinking that anything you do that is contrary to what the other person wants is probably going to lead to some sort of abandonment.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. And there's another scribbled note I had, which I didn't understand at first. I've had to reread it because my handwriting wasn't very good in early recovery either. It was a bit squiggly. But I'd written down there what she told me, that no is a complete sentence. And I thought, what have I said that for? But it is, and it goes back to that point. You shouldn't really have to explain. If you've got boundaries in place, you shouldn't have to explain to people why you don't want to do something. You just say no, and that's that. But we all make it an excuse, don't we? We always make a reason why.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. If you find yourself saying no and then going into a flowery description of why, again, there's a suggestion there that for some reason you feel bad about saying no. You feel guilty. You feel as if you shouldn't really be saying that. I don't wholly concur with this idea, but there is a theory that if someone asks you something and you think about it, if it isn't a definite yes, then it is a definite no. And it's quite hard to live like that, but sometimes it's very helpful to try.
Yeah. I can understand it. It can be a slightly blurred line you're drawing there, but I can understand that. I remember one of the when I was on the rehab course, they did a lot of work in groups, and they gave us an exercise, and we were filling out some bits and pieces, some questions, and one of them was if you were walking home and someone was at the side of the road, one of your mates was at the side of the road, they needed help to fix their car, which you were quite capable of doing, which would mean you'd be getting home late and you would you'd upset the people at home because you'd miss your dinner, etc. What would you do? I thought, that's a tricky one. And it goes back to that people-pleasing business, doesn't it? Would I stay and help that person and risk the wrath of other people at home, which I hold more dearly, or would I just say no and just walk by? Tough one, isn't it?
It's tough because when you say yes to someone, that is a situation where you're being asked to prioritise. So you're being asked to decide between helping this friend or going home and having dinner with your family. Now, the problem only comes when you make a decision that is not congruent with how you feel. So there's nothing wrong with you saying, yeah, of course, I'll stop and help if that is what you feel you want to do. The problem comes when you have this conflict between what you feel like you should do and what you want to do. If your friend asks you for help and you think, yeah, well, he's my friend, I want to help him, that's okay. You'll say, yeah, I want to do this, even if it means you've got to upset somebody else. The problem comes when you make decisions that are not congruent with you. When you say that you really feel no, that's the thing that I think indicates an issue with boundaries.
Does that come under the sort of congruent dissonance where what you're thinking on the inside and how you behave on the outside is different? Yeah.
I mean, that happens a lot, doesn't it? Yeah, you must see it a hell of a lot in addiction and recovery.
All the time.
Where people are saying one thing, but actually underneath they're thinking something else. Because and the reason that they have that disconnect is because they feel at some level if they do what they want to do, that the consequences for them are going to be negative. So they're trying to keep themselves safe, but by doing so, they're actually creating an enormous amount of anxiety and frustration in themselves, because to live a life that is not the life that we want to live becomes harder and harder and harder. That's one of the reasons why people drink.
It does. Yeah, it is. It is. I remember the boundaries I know when I was away in detox, we had boundaries about certain things. About you weren't allowed to have coffee, for example. You weren't allowed to take coffee into the meetings, and I rallied hard against it. I thought, no, I don't want this, don't want that. And they said, the setting up of the boundaries is important. You've had none really, and this is part of your retraining, come back into society. We're not being harsh on you. We think coffee is, it can be slightly mind altering, and you'll end up with a reliance on it. But, we have boundaries. Same as we have boundaries with the groups. People come onto the boundary. We want to create an environment where people are going to be safe. Mm-hmm. So boundaries are there for safety reasons in the sort of general population. But I think what we're talking about here generally is the boundaries set for our own individual purposes, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And both are really crucial. If you think about our earliest experience of learning about the importance of boundaries, it's when we're children. Children want to know where the boundaries are. Now, children, we both know that children might kick and scream about boundaries that you put down. You've got to go to bed now. You need to eat your dinner if you want any pudding or whatever it might be. But those, as much as children complain about those, children only feel safe when they're in place.
Yeah.
So what boundaries give us are some sort of sense of certainty. There's some predictability about life, and we all need to feel as if there is some semblance of that, even though there really isn't any. And so boundaries give us that. So when you're in a group in detox and they're saying you can't bring coffee into the room, regardless of whether there was any kind of mind-altering property about it, doesn't really matter. It's a rule. And when you've been in the chaos of addiction for so long, one of the things you definitely need to reintroduce to yourself is some sense of boundary, some rule, some routine. We've spoken before about how important routine is in routine is a boundary. If you say I'm going to get up at 6:30 every morning and I'm going to meditate or have a coffee or whatever it is, the longer you do that for, what you're doing is you're establishing a clear boundary in your life, which is a healthy habit.
Yeah, it is. And I don't want to drag this out too long because another area I want to look at, so we could look at it perhaps quite briefly here, but it's recognising other people's boundaries, because I think sometimes we can be guilty of not doing so, can't we?
Yeah. The easy part of boundaries is establishing your own. The hard part of boundaries is policing them.
But when we're recognising other people's boundaries, I've become more aware of that, I suppose, once again, going back to this setting your own boundaries, which in recovery you start off with none, and then gradually you formulate the ones which do suit you, and you're sort of advised about which ones you should be taken into account. Like, for example, we always recommend that people don't let people coming into their own house with their drink. Do you know what I mean? Don't let people come round and bring drink with them. It's a boundary. Don't let that happen. And I think that recognising, but other people would still want to do that. Then their friends would still want to do that. They're not recognising that boundary. And I think we can be guilty of not recognising other people's boundaries sometimes. I think it's polite to ask permission, isn't it, if you want to do something. But it's easier for me to do that now. Now I have my own.
If you're going to visit someone who's in recovery, you're absolutely right that thinking about their boundaries would require you to say, is it okay if I bring some wine to drink with dinner? Yeah. But in a sense, yes, you can certainly control the way that you think about other people's boundaries, but the harder task in terms of your boundaries versus someone else is when someone else isn't thinking about yours and being able to. So, for instance, if someone was coming to your house for dinner and they turn up with beer, what would you say?
No, can't bring that in. Leave it outside.
See, that's the thing that people find hard. What people find hard is once they've laid down a boundary, they find it hard then to police it. But you're absolutely right. That's exactly the right thing to do. Look, you can't bring that in here because it is tough. It's really tough.
It's very tough.
Yeah, it is. But it's important.
Yeah, it is. It is important, and I think that that was the only other part I wanted to touch on. But I think it's been quite a rounded episode, really, in what I feel like I've got to what I've wanted out of this, and hopefully it's come across. There's probably a load of other areas we've missed, but I think we've done all right. I've come to the end of my notes. That's what I'm trying to say in a roundabout, convoluted sort of way.
You don't like using that sentence anymore, do you?
I'm sorry?
You don't like using that sentence, I've come to the end of my notes, do you?
I don't know. I've tried to find other ways of doing it and saying it. You've made me conscious of it.
Well, I think the irony, of course, is that when you utter that sentence, I've come to the end of my notes. What you're actually doing is establishing a boundary.
I am, yeah. I'm going to put it back in on all occasions now, then, just so that I've got one. Should we go on to our gratitude lists?
Yeah, why not?
On there this week. Have you thought of one whilst we've been speaking?
I have, yeah. I have. I have. It's quite a simple. Well, it's a very simple one, but it is something that I always truly feel grateful for, and it suddenly came to me because I did it yesterday, which is changing the bed sheets, getting into a clean bed.
Oh yeah. That is nice.
I can't think of a situation in which that isn't a complete joy.
No, I always look forward to January. But yes, no, but it is right. It is good. It is a nice feeling, certainly.
Yeah, I mean that's nice. That must be a real annual celebration for you, changing the bed sheets.
It's part of I don't really like Christmas, but I love the new sheets January the 1st. Well, I had loads of things on here really, and I'll sort of cut them down really. But I've got my COVID jab next Friday, so I'm grateful for that. Yeah,
fantastic.
Well, I just opened up a new age category, so I'm in the 55 to 59 category. So I'm in.
Yeah. Have you got to go to the cinema to have yours done?
Oh, don't get me started on that one.
Oh, well, what happened? Come on, tell us the story.
Well, no, I went onto the website to book it. Emily sent me through the link and said, Dad, let's open it up to get yourself sorted out. And so I went on there straight away. And yes, indeed, the Odeon Cinema in Maidstone. It said you book up your first appointment and you book up your second appointment at the same time, don't you?
Yeah.
You go through all that rigmarole, put the times, they show you what dates are available, what times are available. You go through that, do it for the second one, get right to the end, accept and confirm, push that, not available. Oh, no. So I went back in again, and the Odeon Cinema wasn't there anymore. It's gone, mate. So I've got to go to East Peckham. Yeah, I've got to go to East Peckham for my jab.
Oh, maybe they've stopped the Odeon Cinema because I expect they'll be opening the cinemas soon, won't they?
Maybe. How dare they use it for its correct purpose?
I did wonder about that when they opened it up. I thought, oh, crikey, there'll be people going in to see a movie and then, instead of having an ice cream before the showing, they'll be having their COVID jab.
Have a jab, yeah. I was also grateful for having a little text message this morning from one of the guys in group saying, I've just started listening to your podcast. I really love them. Thank you very much. Lovely little chat.
That's nice.
Yeah, he is a Leeds fan, so you'll probably know who I'm talking about. Who we are playing tomorrow. West Ham are playing Leeds on Monday.
Oh, I thought you meant you and me were playing them. I was going to say, crikey, that's going to be a bit of a one-sided affair.
It'd be a little bit tough, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Will you go in goal if it was just you and me versus Leeds? Or would I goal? Rush goal. I'm not sure your knees would take it these days, would they?
No, mate. I'll be a bit slow, that's for sure. Anyway, yeah, so that's it, really. Oh, I did do a Spotify search for boundaries because instead of guilty pleasures, I'm putting this in at the moment to see what I think. Okay, so it's the Spotify search for boundaries. I come up with a group called Boundaries. Really? You probably like them. They're a metalcore wrecking crew from Connecticut. You must like them. It must be. It's very similar to that one we were talking about last week, the German death metal group Susuro. They sound exactly the same. I can't differentiate between these groups. They all sound exactly the same.
Yeah, it won't surprise you to hear that I haven't heard of them, and doesn't sound like the sort of thing I'm going to particularly enjoy. In fact, I was just thinking there about putting the word boundary into Spotify playlists. I can't think of any songs or any bands that have got the word boundary in it.
There was one called No Boundaries by Adam Lambert. Do you know Adam Lambert? He's on tour. He goes on tour with Queen and does the vocals. I think he won American Idol, didn't he?
I think he did win American Idol, yeah.
Yeah, always runner-up or something like that. I know he was finalist in American Idol, and he got the Queen gig, which was quite a good one to get, really, wasn't it? Difficult shoes to fill, obviously Freddie Mercury, but...
Does he actually have to wear his shoes as well, then?
Everything the same, vest. Yeah.
That funny little microphone.
A little microphone, they give him a little stick-on moustache. The lot, mate, he's done.
Yes, very good. All right, then.
Excellent. Well, have a good week.
Yeah, and you. See you soon.
Okay. See you soon.
Laters.
Bye.
Bye.
Sideways was created by Graham Landy and Martin Pankhurst. If you want to read more about our work or sort through the extensive archive of past episodes, just visit grahamlandywellbeing.co.uk/sideways-podcast. You can follow us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram at Sideways Podcast, and you can email us if you have a question or if there's something you'd like us to cover. But most of all, we want to tell you how grateful we are that you come and listen, and we ask that if you've enjoyed what you've heard, that you spread the word. And we'll see you next week.